CHI produced this report as part of our value for money work looking at spending on temporary accommodation in England. We really wanted to fully understand as much as possible what's actually happening out there with the cost of temporary accommodation. I think there are two key learnings that we can take from the findings of this report about the finances of local authorities. One is that the burden of spending on temporary accommodation has shifted quite considerably from national to local government. There's been around an 80% increase in this over the past 5 or 6 years. The other is that in the past year or so, there's been quite a significant increase in the unit cost of temporary accommodation paid for by local authorities. So the burden placed on local authorities has increased, and the amount they're paying per unit has also increased. There are some really interesting points around value for money, one of which is that it appears that different parts of the country are securing different amounts of value for money from their spending on temporary accommodation. In London, for example, the difference between what local authorities spend on temporary accommodation and what it would cost in the private rented sector is quite small. It's around 14%. In other parts of the country, which have had less experience of dealing with people in temporary accommodation, it's far greater. In Yorkshire and Humber, for example, there's a difference of about 200% between the cost of temporary accommodation and the cost of property in the private rented sector. We want government to work closely with local authorities to improve the quality of data around spending on temporary accommodation by improving recording practices. We also want government with local authorities to devise unit costs on temporary accommodation, make those public, and enable that information to be shared by local authorities to benchmark themselves so they can properly drive improvements in their value for money. Well, data sounds like a relatively boring, dry topic, but it matters because at the local level, wherever we have worked with local authorities, even the best run local authorities, we've found that through improved use of data, they can understand how to make their services work better and more effectively for, in this case, people experiencing homelessness. We genuinely believe that good data underpins good, well thought through policymaking.